5 years ago, I was in the kitchen of my apartment with my little 3-year-old daughter, Josie. Josie was a ball of energy. She was playing with a nickel, begging for my attention, yelling in her little high-pitched 3-year-old voice, something like, "Daddy, Daddy, look at me, look at me." And I told her, like a great dad, "That's great, honey." But really, I wasn't paying attention. I had my cell phone out, and I was doing the zombie scroll. So I'm sure you all have done the zombie scroll, or at least seen someone do it. It's when you're casually scrolling through your cell phone without any real reason or purpose. In fact, the average person scrolls through 300 feet of mobile content a day. 300 feet! That's the same height as the Statue of Liberty. You might be in line at the grocery store, or in your car at a stoplight, or in my case, in my kitchen, with my daughter by my side as she's trying to get my attention with a nickel. Then I heard Josie knock her hand against the kitchen cupboard. That's when I turned, and I saw her gasping for air. I told her to spit the nickel out, but she couldn't. I reached my fingers in her mouth, fishing around, but there was nothing there. I started banging on her back, but that nickel was stuck in her throat. In that moment, I felt this combination of both fear and shame, and I had this horrible sinking feeling in the bottom of my stomach that I had failed as a parent. And this was all because I was glued to my phone. There have been countless books, articles, and op-eds in the New York Times about cell phone addiction, and there's lots of blame going around. It's technology's fault. It's society's fault. Some say it's social media's fault. Most of these solutions suggest that we limit access to our phone in some way. Solutions like don't use your phone on the weekends when you're at home with your family, or grayscale out your apps so that you notice them less. Did you know there are even apps that control our apps so that we use our apps less? There's even a whole movement, #delete Facebook. Now, just in case you were zombie scrolling through my intro, I do currently work at Facebook. So that one's not really an option for me. Regardless, I like Facebook. I wouldn't work there if I didn't. And I like being able to use my phone. And none of the more restrictive solutions worked for me. I tried them. When Josie was choking in the kitchen that morning, I used that same cell phone to call 911. The ambulance came just a few minutes later. Josie was rushed to the hospital. We get to the hospital, she's wheeled in, they take x-rays, and I use that same cell phone to snap this picture of Josie in her hospital bed. You don't need to be a doctor to see where that nickel ended up in her throat. I used my phone to research the medical procedure they needed to do to get the nickel out. I used my phone to calm Josie down by handing it to her and playing her favorite videos. When they put Josie under anesthesia, I'll never forget, they wheeled her away from my wife and I prayed that my lack of attention in the kitchen that morning didn't cost my baby girl her life. 2 hours later, the surgeon walked towards us while we're sitting in the waiting room. We stand up. She handed us the nickel, and she said, "Josie's gonna be fine." Thank God. The next day, after we were out of the woods, I used my phone and posted about that whole experience on Facebook. Not only did people comment on the post, but I got dozens of calls from family and friends, some of whom I hadn't spoken to for a while, just checking in, wanting to make sure Josie was okay. I found it ironic that the same phone that was this source of distraction in my kitchen that morning became a powerful tool to not only help me manage this horrible situation, but ultimately connect and reconnect with people. So rather than restrict access to my phone, I created one simple phone life balance solution that has helped me tremendously. And I'd like to share it with you all today. I call this the spa solution. These days, there are many different types of spas, but for the purpose of this talk, we're all going to bathe in virtual, rich, mineral waters together, where we can relax, reconnect with ourselves and those around us by simply exploring the question when we should and shouldn't use our phone. So the first question that I ask myself when I'm about to take my phone out of my pocket is, am I being safe? It's probably no surprise, but cell phones are the #1 cause for distracted driving, which includes texting, calling, taking videos, watching videos. A recent study by ZenDrive found that the average driver is on their phone on 88% of their journeys. Yeah. The National Safety Council reports that there are tens of thousands of injury-related accidents every year due to cell phone use. And it's not just drivers. You probably see this when you're driving yourself. Pedestrians are literally walking into traffic while they're zombie scrolling through their phone. Unfortunately, hundreds have even died trying to take the perfect selfie. There's a name for these. Anyone know what it is? Kilfies. And while most of us in this room probably know not to use our phone when our back is dangerously close to a waterfall, there are seemingly everyday situations in life that are unsafe, like being in the kitchen with your kid when she's trying to get your attention with a small object. Just as important as being safe in the physical world is being safe in the digital world. In my current role at Facebook, I spend a lot of time exploring how to keep kids safer online and be knowledgeable digital citizens. This is especially important when you're sending messages from your phone. As our nourishing spa bath continues, the second question that I ask myself, #2, is, am I being polite? Technology has redefined the rules of how, when, and where we communicate. However, basic etiquette, it still needs to apply. I want you to raise your hand if it bothers you when you're talking to someone and they start scrolling through their cell phone. Yeah, of course it does, because it's rude. We may follow these rules at a TEDx talk, except for that one guy in the back. I see you. Hi. But we're becoming more and more comfortable zombie scrolling around other people, including our spouse, our kids, our friends, and colleagues. Suffice it to say, it's just as important to be polite when you're communicating with your phone. If there are any teenagers in the audience, your cell phone is likely the primary way you access the internet. It's also the primary tool for cyberbullying. But regardless of your age, the same rules apply. Don't be a bully, don't be a jerk, and be polite. I'm not sure why I suddenly became an angry New Yorker there, but hey, it's my TEDx talk. As we get to the deep end of our scintillating, I love that word, scintillating, spa bath, we get to the defining factor in whether we should or should not use our phone. The A in spa stands for, it's a little dramatic effect, active. A starts with A, so I heard my wife yell out safe. No, it starts with an A, honey. Active. Are we actively looking at our phone with a reason and purpose, or are we just passively scrolling through our phone due to boredom, stress, anxiety, or something else? Now, there's been a lot of research on active versus passive screen time for kids. In the most simple terms, active screen time involves some sort of cognitive or physical engagement with the device, where passive screen time requires little thought, interaction, or creativity. And while many parents do worry about screen time, a recent study by University of Michigan's Center for Human Growth and Development contends that the amount of screen time is actually the wrong question. The study finds that how kids are using their device, not how long they're on their device, is the strongest predictor of emotional and social problems connected with screen time and screen addiction. This idea behind active screen time needs to be applied to our adult cell phone use. But what is active screen time as it relates to our phones? We can't just categorize some apps as passive and some apps as active. That would be too easy. For example, if I'm scrolling through email or my social media account, that's a passive behavior. But if I'm composing an email or a comment on social media, that makes it active. Likewise, if I'm just scrolling through YouTube videos, being mesmerized by that algorithm, that's passive. But if I'm actively searching for content that'll inform or stimulate my mind, that makes it active. When I became aware of my own behavior, I realized I was always taking my phone out of my pocket, scrunching my shoulders, and just checking. But I had nothing to check. I would just mindlessly flip from one app to the other. That's how I defined my own passive behavior. So who here has a job where you need to actually look at your phone for work? Yeah, many of us. But our jobs should not be justification for zombie-like behavior. Sure, I need to also check my email for work. I also need to check Facebook for work. But checking every couple minutes seems extreme. By just asking myself, am I going to actively check something with a reason? I'm able to leave our spa bath refreshed and engage with my phone more responsibly. Using the spa solution, we don't need to give up our phones, but just be more aware of how we're using them. Dr. Judson Brewer is a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist, and he studied the relationship between mindfulness and addiction. In his research, he found that simply being curious and mindful about both our triggers and our behaviors can lead to an overall positive change in our habits. What does this mean? In short, mindfulness actually works. With the spa solution, you just need to be mindful regarding whether you are being safe, polite, and what's that third one? Active. That's right. I even have it up on the screen for you. Active. That's it. If you're not any of those three things, just ask yourself, do I really need to look at my phone in that moment? If you continue to choose to use your phone, be mindful of the choice. And look, we're not going to be perfect. I'm certainly not. I see my wife there. She's nodding her head. Thank you, honey. I appreciate that. However, just being conscious of these three things has led to big improvements in how I use my phone. And when I go back to that day 5 years ago in my kitchen and apply spa after the fact, I realized I was 0 for 3 that morning with my daughter. I wasn't being safe while she was playing with a nickel. I wasn't being polite while I was right in front of her, and I certainly wasn't being active with my phone. I failed in that moment, but it was an inflection point in my own life that actually led to something positive. I took this picture about 3 weeks ago. That's Josie in the middle, her in the pink. That's her younger brother, Cooper, and younger sister, Sydney. The spa solution has not only made me more connected to my family and to those around me, but it's really made me more connected to myself. And my hope is that some of you consider the spa solution and that it helps you as well. Thank you.